Welcome to the SafeWork New South Wales webinar on the National Audit Tool for Amusement Devices. My name is Jacob Morris and I'm an Assistant State Inspector from the engineering team at SafeWork New South Wales. This webinar aims to provide amusement device owners with information on how they can meet their obligations under the work health and safety laws. Today, I am on site with an amusement device at Luna Park, Sydney, and will be introducing the Work Health and Safety Regulators National Audit Tool for Amusement Devices. I'll be describing how the tool is applied here in New South Wales and reviewing some key sections of the National Audit Tool, sharing information and advice on how to get the most from your interactions with SafeWork New South Wales and our work health and safety inspectors. Please note, the webinar does not claim to be a comprehensive statement of the responsibilities of a person conducting a business or undertaking in relation to the ownership or operation of an amusement device. The National Audit Tool was developed by the Australian Work Health and Safety Regulators, SafeWork Australia and the Office of Regulatory Services. It is used nationally by work health and safety regulators to conduct inspections against the requirements outlined within the model work health and safety legislation. This webinar will be referencing elements of version 5 of the National Audit Tool. You can access the full version of the National Audit Tool from the SafeWork New South Wales website. It is important to note that while the tool was developed to provide a consistent approach to the inspections by work health and safety regulators, because of the differences in legislation, some jurisdictions will utilise a modified version of this audit tool, and the National Audit Tool is not a substitute for the annual inspection. Before we look at some important sections of the National Audit Tool and its application here in New South Wales, I would like to introduce you to Celia Menens, Work Health and Safety and Compliance Manager from Luna Park, Sydney. Welcome, Celia.
Thanks, Jacob. Welcome to Luna Park.
Thank you for joining me today to discuss your experience using the National Audit Tool. Can you tell me a little bit more about the device we're standing in front of?
This is the Volare, our wave swinger. It's a year and a half old. It's been in operation in Luna Park since March 2019.
Whereabouts was the Volare manufactured and what classification of device is it?
The Volare was manufactured in Italy and it's a Class 3 device.
How many inspections have been undertaken on the Volare using the National Audit Tool?
Given it's a relatively new ride, we've done one inspection in the past year using the National Audit Tool. It's a great resource for validating our processes for the inspection, maintenance, repair and operation of our amusement devices. The structure of the National Audit Tool is very practical and it provides an excellent framework to confirm compliance and ensure the necessary documentation is maintained for the ride.
Thanks, Celia. Let's move on to some key focus areas of the National Audit Tool. Audits may include both an audit of the documentation and site setup or just the site setup, depending on when the device was last audited and what issues were previously identified. The National Audit Tool collects details of the amusement device and the person or business operating the device. First up, you will need to identify the item registration details. Within New South Wales, amusement devices classed as a 2, 3, 4 or 5 in accordance with Australian Standard 3533 require item registration. Playground devices, water slides, wave generators and inflatables with a platform height less than 3 metres are exempt from the item registration process. There is national mutual recognition of registrations, so amusement devices may be registered interstate as long as the registration details are available in the state in which the inspection is being undertaken. Next, you will need to confirm the design registration details, which in New South Wales is required for amusement devices designed after the 1st of September 2001. However, there are some exemptions to this requirement. If your amusement device is classified as a Class 1 in accordance with Australian Standard 3533, or if it is a playground device, wave generator, or an inflatable with a platform height of less than 3 metres, then it does not need design registration in New South Wales. Please remember, regardless of where the device is registered, you must have the registration certificate available for inspection at all times. The National Audit Tool then calls for confirmation of current, adequate public liability insurance for the person conducting a business or undertaking and a current workers' compensation policy, which provides adequate coverage for all employees. The National Audit Tool then asks whether there are any outstanding notices issued from work health and safety regulators relating to the device. Having this information complete and easily accessible, ready for presentation before your audit starts will allow for a much more seamless interaction with your work health and safety inspector. It's a good idea to have all of Section A complete and stored in one location like in a folder with all of the relevant certificates and supporting documents in an order that is consistent with the flow of the audit tool. The next key area of the National Audit Tool looks at logbooks and focuses on the maintenance and inspection requirements of the amusement device, as well as how it's operated as required by the Work Health and Safety legislation. Each amusement device must have its own logbook. However, these can be physical documents or electronic files, or even a combination of the two. The amusement device logbook must contain work procedures or manuals for the operation of the device and the related training records for the staff. The logbook must also contain a record of when and how the device has been tested, inspected and maintained, as well as where and when it has been set up, commissioned and dismantled. It's important to note that while the device we're looking at today is a wave swinger, different amusement devices will have their own specific requirements and particular focus areas, depending upon the design and conditions of the operation. If you're unsure about the adequacy of your own logbooks, discuss them with a competent person that undertakes your annual inspections or call SafeWork on 13 10 50. Speaking of annual inspections, within the Work Health and Safety legislation, there is a requirement for annual inspections of amusement devices by a competent person. The specifics of annual inspections is dependent upon each individual device, and depending upon the complexity of the amusement device, the annual inspection may require the involvement of multiple competent people inspecting aspects of the device relevant to their own expertise. For example, one person may undertake the inspection of the mechanical components and arrange for the inspection of structural components by another independent competent person, while the control systems and electrical components are assessed and inspected by a third individual. The annual inspection of an amusement device should include a check of the logbook and operational history, including a register of any repairs and alterations made to the device since the last detailed inspection. Any significant alterations which affect the health and safety of the workers or patrons will also require an alteration of the design registration. The annual inspection should also include a check of the maintenance history, tests and inspections that have been undertaken. Generally, these will be in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations or the recommendations of the competent person conducting the annual inspections. Often these recommendations relate to the testing of the critical components of the device and indicate what testing and inspections should be undertaken to assess their integrity, such as non-destructive testing methods. The duty of PCBUs to manage risks to the health and safety is a core component of the Work Health and Safety legislation, and the National Audit Tool aims to assist in assessing compliance through a number of prompts to look at the management of the risks to workers and patrons throughout the setup, commissioning, operation and dismantling of the amusement device. The Work Health and Safety legislation calls for the management of risks as far as reasonably practicable. This means the best risk controls should be implemented wherever possible. As inspectors, we're looking for obvious defects or poor practices, such as missing bolts or clips on the amusement device, broken or cracked structural components, excessive corrosion, adequate labelling on the control panels, and fencing to ensure the proper movement of patrons. Depending upon the specifics of your amusement device and setup location, additional risks may need to be considered and managed, including overhead power lines, overhanging trees, sloping ground, packing and dunnage to ensure the stability of the device, machine guarding, and patron access and egress. A crucial component of the management of risks related to amusement devices is the rider restraint system. A rider restraint system will need to be employed where there is a risk that a patron may be injured, ejected, or suddenly displaced. The type of rider restraint system used will be dependent upon the specifics of the device and its designed operating conditions. There are a number of factors which are taken into account when assessing whether a patron restraint system is adequate, and they include the nature of the device, the acceleration a patron will be subjected to, the physical characteristics of the patrons allowed to ride the amusement device, and the ability to evacuate patrons in the event of an emergency. These factors, and more, are considered and assessed by the designer and manufacturers of the amusement device, utilising industry standards such as our Australian Standard 3533 and numerous international standards. When it comes to our regulatory inspections of amusement devices using the National Audit Tool, some key things inspectors look for are the condition of the rider restraint system, the limitations and allowances and gaps in the rider restraint system, and how that relates to the patron's characteristics, such as minimum and maximum heights, interlocks, controls and operator verification for the restraint system, and whether there are any backup restraints or redundancy within the system. During an inspection of the device, you may be asked to demonstrate the operation of the rider restraint system, including the deployment of the secondary restraint where possible. The work health and safety legislation requires PCBUs to prepare, maintain and implement emergency plans. PCBUs operating amusement devices should ensure that a register of operator training is maintained, including training in emergency procedures. Operators should be able to demonstrate their understanding of the emergency procedures if requested. The National Audit Tool confirms compliance with this requirement by asking what emergency processes and plans are in place in the event of an incident, such as a loss of power. Have the operators been trained in the emergency procedures? Has the emergency procedure been practiced? And if so, how often? Can the amusement device be safely isolated from electrical power? Is there emergency lighting? How can the patrons be evacuated off the device in the event of a power loss? Are alternative supplies for electrical or hydraulic power available if necessary? The noise of an amusement device, both that produced by the device in operation and accompanying music, is often of great concern to the organisers of carnivals, shows and fetes. Likewise, for those fixed amusement devices, neighbouring businesses and residences show similar concern for the levels of noise generated. What is often overlooked is the impact of extended exposure to high levels of noise to the workers and operators of the amusement devices. The work health and safety legislation sets the average exposure standard for noise to 85 decibels over an 8-hour period and a peak acceptable noise level of 140 decibels. This requirement is not exclusive to the operation of amusement devices, but is applicable to all workplaces. It has been established to minimise the risk to workers. For more information, you can visit the SafeWork New South Wales website and see the fact sheet on controlling hazardous noise in the amusement device industry. The National Audit Tool also places a focus on the noise levels. If you believe your amusement device could approach an average noise level of 85 decibels or a peak of 140 decibels, records of noise level testing undertaken by a competent person should be kept with the amusement device within the logbook to confirm compliance. We now come to the last key focus area of the National Audit Tool, those checks relating to the electrical components of the amusement ride. Electrical components of the amusement devices are crucial to the safe operation and require constant monitoring. Due to the operating environment of amusement devices, electrical equipment is often exposed to conditions that are likely to result in damage such as moisture, heat, vibration, mechanical damage and dust. The legislation requires the presence of residual current devices, or RCDs, to assist in controlling electrical risks. The legislation also requires that these RCDs are regularly tested by a competent person. Confirming the records of the functional tests of RCDs is a component of the National Audit Tool, as well as confirming the records for the testing and inspection of other electrical components. They may be utilised on the device, commonly referred to as testing and tagging. While undertaking an inspection of an amusement device using the National Audit Tool, I would also check that no double adapters or piggyback plugs are being utilised, that leads are protected from damage and water ingress, and that electrical switchboards are appropriately secured to prevent unauthorised access. With that, we've reached the last section of the National Audit Tool, the summary sheet. Amusement device operators should request a copy of these sheets for their own records, and these can then be kept with the amusement device logbook. Maintaining a record of the National Audit Tool inspections undertaken by the various work health and safety regulators will assist the next inspector that encounters the device and help to determine whether a full assessment should be undertaken. That brings us to the end of the webinar. I hope the information in this webinar has given you a better understanding of the National Audit Tool and how it is applied in New South Wales. Some key things to remember include: prepare and organise your inspection documentation in a folder in the order that it appears within the National Audit Tool. Manage the risks specific to your device. Monitor the noise levels to ensure they are safe for your workers and patrons. Make sure workers know what to do in the event of an emergency. Ensure a competent person regularly inspects the electrical components of the amusement device to make sure they are safe. A copy of the National Audit Tool is located under the Resources tab on your webinar screen, and other amusement device information tools and resources can be accessed from the SafeWork New South Wales website. Additionally, you can telephone SafeWork on 13 10 50 for more information. Thank you for participating in this SafeWork New South Wales webinar.